Character, name, Marcus Reed, age, 29, part 1. The Fall. I still remember the sting of my mother's words, sharp and unforgiving, echoing in the cramped kitchen where my family gathered every evening. "You'll never be anything but a failure, Marcus," she said flatly, her voice louder than it should have been for such a small room. The laughter that followed wasn't the comforting kind. It was cold, mocking, a chorus that tore at my skin like icy winds. My father didn't say a word. He just looked away, as if ashamed to be seen with me. I was 17, caught in the middle of a family drowning in its own disappointment. My grades were slipping, but it wasn't from lack of trying. My part-time jobs barely covered the bills, and I was the butt of every joke at school. Lazy, they called me. Lost cause. I carried those words like stones in my pocket, heavy and unforgiving. At night, lying on the thin mattress in our one-bedroom apartment, I wondered if maybe they were right. Maybe I was a failure. But deep down, beneath the hurt and anger, a small flame flickered, stubborn and unyielding. I refused to be the punchline of their cruel jokes forever. High school ended with no fanfare, no applause, just the weight of their disappointment pressing down. The next few years were a blur of dead-end jobs, short-lived relationships, and constant rejection. I watched my old friends climb ladders I couldn't even see, their lives broadcast on social media like trophies I was never meant to hold. But then, one day, an opportunity came. A temp job at a small tech startup, barely paying enough to cover rent, but promising a glimpse into a world I'd only ever dreamed of. The CEO was a tough woman named Clara. Sharp, demanding, impossible to impress. On my first day, I spilled coffee on her laptop. She looked at me, eyes hard, and said, "You're lucky I'm not firing you already." I swallowed my shame, cleaned the mess, and promised myself I would prove her wrong. But proving myself wasn't as simple as showing up. There were setbacks. Projects that failed, ideas rejected, days when I wanted to quit and disappear. Worse was the betrayal I never saw coming. 3 months in, I confided in a colleague, Jake, someone I trusted. I told him about my ideas for a new app feature that could change the company's future. He smiled and nodded, promising support. But a week later, I found out he'd pitched the idea to Clara as his own. "Why would you do this?" I confronted him, voice cracking. He shrugged. "Business is business, Marcus. You're replaceable." That moment broke something inside me. I spiraled into weeks of hopelessness. I barely ate, my energy sapped by anxiety and despair. At night, I lay awake, haunted by the words from home and the sting of betrayal at work. I was freezing in more ways than one. Cold apartments, colder hearts. But somewhere in that darkness, I made a choice. I wouldn't let them write my story. Not my family, not Jake, not fear. I threw myself into learning, coding, marketing, networking, anything to sharpen my edge. Every rejection, every failure became fuel. One sleepless night, I sat at my desk, fingers trembling as I sent out a bold email to Clara, a proposal to lead a new product line. Her reply surprised me. "Come to my office at 9 a.m. I knew this was my chance. Part 2, the turning point. I didn't sleep that night. The hours dragged by, a slow crawl of nerves and restless anticipation. The city outside my tiny apartment hummed softly, indifferent to the battle raging inside me. At 8:50 a.m. sharp, I was outside Clara's office, heart pounding like a war drum. She greeted me without a smile, sharp eyes assessing every inch of me, every flicker of doubt I tried to hide. "Let's hear what you've got," she said, motioning me inside. I laid out my proposal, a new product line aimed at a market no one else had dared to touch. Each slide, each word was the result of sleepless nights, countless failures, and a fierce determination to rewrite my story. Clara listened, silent, her fingers steepled under her chin. When I finished, she didn't respond immediately. For a terrifying moment, I thought I'd failed again. Then she said, "You're ambitious, reckless, but maybe that's exactly what we need." And just like that, my life shifted. I was given the green light to lead a small team, budget barely enough to cover essentials, but it was a start. The next months were relentless. I worked from dawn till late into the night, juggling client calls, coding, marketing plans, and staff management. Each small win felt like a mountain climbed, but the shadow of betrayal still haunted me. Jake's smirk in the hallways, the way some co-workers whispered when I walked by, it all chipped away at my confidence. One day, the breaking point came. During a presentation to investors, Jake publicly challenged my ideas. mocking my background, my youth, my lack of experience. I froze, cheeks burning, but something inside me snapped. Standing there, eyes locked with his, I found a strength I didn't know I had. "I'm not just a kid with dreams," I said steadily, voice rising. "I'm the reason this company's about to enter a new era. You're welcome to join us, or get out of the way." The room went silent. Clara nodded slowly, eyes approving. Afterward, Jake avoided me. That day marked a turning point. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was leading. But success brought new challenges. As the product launched, profits rose, and so did the stakes. Pressure mounted, deadlines tightened, criticism sharpened. Yet the old wounds from home were never far. One evening, after a long day, I called my mother. "Mum, I want you to come see what I'm building," I said, voice steady despite the lump in my throat. There was silence. Then, in a voice colder than winter, she said, "I don't want to see a failure." I hung up. Her rejection stung, but it also fueled me. I poured that pain into my work, each line of code a defiant middle finger to the past. Then, something unexpected happened. An email arrived from an old mentor, a business leader who had quietly watched my progress. He offered guidance, connections, a chance to step onto a bigger stage. It was risky. Leaving Clara's company meant stepping into the unknown. But I knew deep down, playing small wasn't an option anymore. With trembling hands, I accepted. The next chapter was beginning. Part 3. Rising from the ashes. Leaving Clara's startup was like stepping off a cliff without a parachute. Terrifying, exhilarating, and utterly uncertain. But I couldn't ignore the pull of something bigger, the chance to build my own empire, on my own terms. With the mentor's help, I secured seed funding and assembled a small, scrappy team. People who believed in the dream as fiercely as I did. Our first office was a cramped, forgotten corner of a rundown building, but it was ours. Long days blurred into nights filled with brainstorming, coding, and endless cups of terrible coffee. Failures piled up like bricks in a wall. Servers crashing, investors pulling out, clients vanishing. But every setback was a lesson etched deep into my bones. I learned to fight harder, smarter. I learned that leadership wasn't about giving orders, but inspiring a vision. Months passed, and slowly the product took shape. We launched with nothing but hope and sheer willpower. The market response was lukewarm at first. A few sales here and there, but not enough to cover costs. Bills piled up, rent was overdue, sleepless nights turned into anxiety-fueled days. One evening, I found myself alone in the office, staring at the glowing screen as the user numbers barely moved. I slumped back in my chair, defeated. "Is this it?" I whispered to the empty room. "Is this all I get?" In that moment, the ghost of my mother's words echoed louder than ever. Failure. But then a message popped up. A note from a user who had been following our progress. "Your app helped me find a job," it read. "Thank you for giving me hope." Something inside me shifted. This wasn't about money. It was about impact. Fueled by that small spark, I rallied my team. We worked harder, refined our product, built relationships. Slowly, the user base grew. Investors returned. Profit followed. But success changed the atmosphere around me. Some old friends reached out, with fake smiles, thinly veiled envy. My phone buzzed with messages from relatives who had once ignored my calls. One evening, I received an unexpected invitation. My father. "We should talk," he wrote. My heart thudded. Part of me wanted to lash out. Another part craved the family I'd lost. We met at a quiet cafe. He looked older, wearier. "I was wrong about you," he said, voice thick with regret. I studied him, the man who had stayed silent while my mother tore me down. "I don't need your approval," I said softly. He nodded, a tear slipping down his cheek. That moment was a reckoning. Forgiveness was complicated, but I chose to heal. Because my journey wasn't just about proving others wrong, it was about reclaiming myself. Part 4. The Empire months turned into years, and the small startup I had once barely kept afloat transformed into a thriving tech company. Our user base exploded, partnerships blossomed, and investors who once doubted now scrambled to get a piece of what we were building. I stood on stages, spoke at conferences, and signed deals that once seemed like impossible dreams. But with the rise came the inevitable ghosts of my past. Faces from my old neighborhood, people who once laughed at me, now trying to charm their way back into my life. One day, as I walked into the sleek new office tower that housed our headquarters, I was stopped by a familiar voice. "Marcus, is that really you?" I turned to see Jenny, a girl who had tormented me through school, mocking my clothes, my lack of money, my every stumble. Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite place. Envy? Regret? "Jenny," I said coolly. "It's been a while." She smiled, tight and forced. "I heard about the company. You're really something now." I nodded, feeling the old mix of triumph and bitterness rise inside me. "Thanks," I replied. Funny how things change. There were more visits like hers. Distant cousins suddenly interested in family reunions, old classmates sending friend requests with coy messages. My phone buzzed endlessly with LinkedIn invitations and emails from people who had written me off years ago. Some I ignored, others I responded to with cautious civility. But my focus remained on growth, not just financial, but personal. I invested in mentorship programs for kids from backgrounds like mine, those forgotten, ridiculed, told they'd never make it. I saw in them the same fire that once burned in me, and I was determined to fan that flame. Still, inside, the scars remained. One night, after a long board meeting, I found myself alone, staring out at the city skyline, the same city that had crushed my spirit as a teenager. The weight of success felt heavy. Was this what I wanted? Or was I just trying to prove I wasn't that scared kid anymore? The answer wasn't simple, but as the sun rose, casting golden light over the towers, I felt a quiet peace. I had built something real, not just a company, but a legacy. Part 5: Closure and New Beginnings. Success didn't erase the past. It painted it in sharper colors, made every scar more vivid. But it also gave me something I never had: control over my story. One afternoon, a glossy invitation arrived to a gala hosted by one of the city's most elite foundations. Among the guest list were faces I hadn't seen in years, former classmates, estranged family members, even Jake. The very thought of facing them stirred a tumult of emotions: anger, pride, and something deeper, almost tenderness. I arrived dressed in a tailored suit, the weight of expectation balanced by the calm certainty that I had earned this moment. As I entered the grand ballroom, whispers followed like shadows. I spotted Jake immediately, his eyes wide as he saw me. "Marcus," he said, voice low and forced, "never thought you'd make it this far." I smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of lips. Neither did I. Then a figure approached, my mother. Her eyes glistened with tears, a mixture of regret and awe. "I was wrong," she whispered. "You are more than I ever believed." For a moment, the years of pain and rejection hung between us. But instead of anger, I felt a quiet release. "Thank you," I said softly. "It's never too late." That night, as the gala lights shimmered and music swirled around me, I realized something profound. My worth wasn't defined by their approval. It was forged in my resilience, in the battles fought alone, in the quiet moments of doubt overcome by stubborn hope. I walked outside, stepping into the cool night air. The city lights stretched endlessly, a reminder of endless possibilities. I pulled out my phone and sent a message to a young man I'd met through our mentorship program. "Keep pushing. Your story is just beginning." And with that, I knew my journey was far from over. It was only the start of a new chapter, one I would write with strength, compassion, and the fierce belief that failure is just a stepping stone.